churches, many fellowship churches and other churches throughout Ontario and beyond. And this is part of a weekend seminar that I do for church leadership called a Fresh Wind Weekend. And I see Dave Gray on here. I was with Dave's leadership team in the fall, had a great time up there in Bob Cajun and Fenelon Falls. And so this normally takes, several hours, and it's very interactive with the church kind of figuring out what they should do to engage their community and take, an uptake in their evangelistic and outreach strategy and ministry. So I apologize for the expediency of all this material, and I should say, because guys are on the last two calls saying, can we get the PowerPoint or the notes? And they are going to be posted. So just so that'll save you having to ask that or figure that out. But I think churches need to embrace sort of a four-legged chair in regards to evangelism and outreach. And I think, especially in the time we're in, we need to begin from hope, from a posture of hope from truth. As evangelicals, we've tended to be strong on truth, but people need hope, especially in this season. And we know that hope is derived from the truth of who God is and what he's done for us, but we begin with hope. So that's the center to this whole discussion. And so these are the four outreach evangelism legs that I think make this fourfold Luke 4 evangelistic strategy. You're already doing at least one, and some of you are doing maybe four, but don't be concerned, and you start small and go from there. So experience the message of the gospel, be cared for by the demonstration of the gospel, be confronted by the truth of the gospel, and be equipped by the people of the gospel. Don't get caught up in the titles and terminology. All I'm trying to do is demarcate between four approaches to how we reach out into the world and into the community with the message of Christ. Okay, so Tom, take us to the next slide, and we'll start with the experience, the message of the gospel. And you all are already doing this in some form. And our approach in this, obviously, is people come, this is the church gathered, to Sunday services and special occasions. You may have a Christmas concert or a Good Friday service, special events that may be geared towards some component of outreach or evangelistic reality. Now, critical success factors, the presence of God is preeminent. And I've doubled down on this in the last 2 or 3 years of my ministry, is that people want to experience the transcendent when they come to church on Sunday morning. And so you have to look at, are you invoking and inviting the presence of God? And what are you doing to do that? And what does that look like? But that is just so incredibly important. And then the clarity of our message. What are we actually communicating? And is it clear for people? And we're going to have a potential influx of new people into our church who are going to be either unchurched or possibly being rechurched. And the clarity of the message is going to be just so important here. And this window will be shorter than we like to think it is. We think this will go on. The window will close. So we need to leverage this opportunity. And then understand insider versus outsider culture. When people come to your church for the first time, regardless of why they're there, they're very quickly taking inventory of, they realize that they're an outsider, and they're saying to themselves, what does it take for me to become an insider? And how do I do that? And how easy is that? And so different parts of your church, both the architecture, the signage, the language you use, are all going to either contribute to the ease of which they become an insider, or they're going to say, well, I can't even become an insider. I go around and I do assessments on churches on Sundays. You'd be surprised how many churches I go into, and it's very difficult to actually figure out what you do with your kids. Now, it's not difficult to you because you've been there 5 years, but and most everybody, it's second nature. But don't take those things for granted. Those are the low-hanging fruit. Make that easier. Okay, and then functionally or humanly speaking, to some regard, are the big three, which is preaching. They want to hear decent preaching. They want to hear decent worship, music, however you want to term make the term you want to use. And then thirdly, children's ministry. It used to be, cleanliness was most important for children's ministry. That's important, but the most important thing now is safety. So how safe does your children's ministry feel to parents first blush? Okay. New realities, and I think these are going to become very important as we come out of COVID-19. When people come to your church, can I hurt here? In other words, our language often in churches is, hey, good morning. Is everybody great? I'm doing great. It's a great day to be here at, ABC Church, and, it was great. Everything's great. And And somebody's sitting there and they're saying, really? Because I lost my job this week and my wife and I, our marriage is on struggle street because of financial difficulties and it's not that great. So people want to know, is it okay to be broken and to hurt? And will I be embraced in that? Doesn't mean they're going to stay there, but is there a place for that? Because that's where people are going to be at, and many are already there. And then the second part of that is, does this work on Monday? In other words, what happens here on Sunday, is it applicable to my life as I live out my life? And so those are a couple things that you need to be thinking about in your preaching, in your building, in your ministries, and all of that, because people always say, we have a friendly church, but people are not going to be looking for a friendly church. They're actually going to be looking for friends, and that's actually a different reality. So a couple things to keep in mind. Okay, Tom, let's go to the next one so we keep moving here. Cared for by the demonstration of the gospel. And some of you may have heard Jeff Vanderstelt, who did a presentation on missional communities, and some of our churches are doing a stellar job. Church of the City in Guelph, where my son is pastor of missional living, they're really doing a good job of this. But this is the church scattered. So the first one, which has experienced the message, is the church gathered, our corporate gatherings within our walls. This is the church scattered out into the community. And this is missional communities who are living life on mission in their places of work and where they live and where they play. It's your church's long-term ministries outside the walls of your church. So not stuff where you bring people, it's where you deploy people, okay? Now, what are the critical success factors in this? The proclamation of motivation. And what I mean by that is, you're not going out and doing things where people say, well, you're really nice people, or you're a nice family, or it's nice that you helped out. You're actually equipping and training your people to say, well, you know what? I appreciate you thinking I'm a nice person, but I just want you to know that I've been so impacted by the love of Christ in my life. And I'm a Christian. I follow the Lord Jesus. And I want you to experience some of the love I've experienced. And I hope that by what we've done and how we've got involved in your life, that you've experienced some of that. Continuity, which is avoiding one-offs. So many churches have gotten into things where they go and they hand out water bottles at, the bike race. And they say, oh, we did an outreach. We handed out water bottles. That's not an outreach. That's actually handing out water bottles. That's just doing something. But there's no continuity in that with the potential to build relationship. So that brings us to the third one, is you want to be involved in relationship continuity so people are known. So, does your church, no matter how big, do you take spiritual responsibility for the school that's closest to your church? Are you on a first name basis with the principal there and the vice principal? Do your people go into the school and do lunchtime reading programs and begin to build bridges of love to those kids in your schools? And often kids that are struggling in reading, not always, but often they're kids who the home life may be in disarray. So you go in and you begin to love on those kids and build relationships. And so another critical success factor is you empower and celebrate on Sunday mornings from the platform, because what you celebrate, guys, is what will be replicated. And Sunday morning says this is important. And so you find the zealots and you empower and train and equip those. What are some of the new realities? Well, tough times plus good works equals an opportunity for good news. When everything's going good and everybody feels like they've got, kids with straight A's and straight teeth, they don't really need our help and often aren't interested in it. But people are going to come out of this, and some people are going to be really dinged, and so we have an opportunity. And also the church needs to equip people to do this and then deploy them, release them out into their communities to be the hands and voice of Christ wherever God places them. So that's cared for by the demonstration of the gospel, which often is these missional communities. The third one is confronted by the truth of the gospel. Don't be turned off by that word confronted, because in our culture that's often a bad thing. But this is where we actually communicate in very decided and deliberate ways the message of Christ. Sometimes it's in a group setting like Alpha or Christianity Explored, which is more gathered. Sometimes it's in training and deploying people. We had Jeff Bennett from Harbor Fellowship, whose church has really embraced street evangelism, knocking on door evangelism. And I think we're going to put a link up, aren't we, Tom, on our page for training that Jeff's doing, and his is called Four Fields Training. There's another group called E3, a ministry. They're the guys that architected the I Am Second campaign. Many of you may be familiar with that. And they're doing this kind of hope-filled evangelistic training. And it's basically giving people a very winsome tool that is very simple, but the genius is in the succinctness and the simplicity of communicating the gospel and deploying people. And some people this terrifies, other people this just floats their boat. And the beauty of what some of these groups are doing, which we've really fallen short of in the past, is they're training people, and then you take a training on a Saturday morning, and then Saturday afternoon you actually go out and do it. And that's where most evangelistic training falls short, right? We train people and then nobody ever does it. But we go out in pairs, and you're actually going out and doing it. And most people find, at the end of it, that's not as bad as I thought it would be. And some people really gravitated towards that. But this is the speaking the actual reality and truth directly into people on a more personal level. So what are some new realities? And we'll move on. New realities. We need guys to answer the questions of life that are actually being asked in our day. We often get into great theological treatises, and that's important. That's a part of who we are. But people that are going to be hurting and hope and need hope in the days ahead, they're not going to want to know about dispensationalism. We're going to want to know, does God love me now that I don't have a job, and does he even care that I don't have enough money and the mortgage is due? Those kinds of questions. And further to that, we're going to have to move people the online from viewer to participant. And there's some ways you can do that. I think Tom may speak into this here in a moment, but this will be a new reality. Many of you, if you're streaming, you're getting an uptick of people. And here's where many of those people are coming from. We know this from some surveys that some groups are doing. Many of those people are immediate family of people who are either members or adherents or attendees of your church. And so they're the first concentric circle that are watching, or close family and friends and coworkers. And so how do you equip your people now to go and confront them with the gospel, not sort of, in your face kind of thing, but in a winsome, loving, hope-filled way. And now the fourth one, Tom, just advance there for us. And this one might be the least familiar to you, but I think this is one that's going to have incredible opportunity for us. And that's where people are equipped through the hope of the gospel. So think of what the needs in the world are going to be. I was interacting with a pastor from Cincinnati last week. He told a group of us that in the height of the Great Depression in Ohio, at the very height, the unemployment rate was 25%. They're just on the cusp right now of the unemployment rate in Ohio will be 32% by the end of April. So think about your church. If you have 200 people in your church, if we got to 25%, 50 people will be facing some kind of unemployment crisis. Never mind the larger community. So there are churches who've taken up the charge before COVID-19, an amazing church that has a ministry called crosspurpose.org. I've actually had some discussions with these guys about bringing them to Canada. And out of a church of 300, they have created an employment training program that's unbelievable. It's just fantastic. Very Christocentric. They have not backed off their Christian roots and message one little bit. But areas, you got a small church, guys. Here's a simple idea. When we come out of COVID-19, you're going to have a bunch of people in your community unemployed. So get a hold of the Chamber of Commerce and your local mayor and everything. And once a week, hold a luncheon at your church and say it's for people, who have employment challenges. And one week, have somebody come in and speak on how do you write an effective resume? Have somebody come in and speak, the 5 industries that are going to have the greatest potential for employment. Because some industries, hospitality, if the hospitality restaurant industry contracts by 20 or 25%, which it could very well do, you've got a bunch of people in your community, some in your church, that now that's maybe all they know. So have somebody speak on those issues. Have somebody come and speak about how do you keep a job long-term. Keep it simple, start small, but these are needs. And then you integrate that with the fact that you're people of Christian faith, and that's why you're doing this, and that's what you're about. But you're building relationships. 80% of jobs are found by way of relationship. So you're increasing that. So what is that? Critical success factors. Understanding a theology of work. And this is especially important with the next generation. We go on weekend church retreats, and then Monday it's like, oh yeah, now it's just work. Really? Do we not have a theology of work, of how we live the Christian life in the space that we and time that we dedicate to the biggest part of our week, other than sleeping, is our work? How do we interface? How do we integrate? How does God view our work? And helping people to understand that so that they can be hopeful and truth-centered and ambassadors for Christ in the workplace in a very deliberate way. Telling while training, while we're helping people to get re-employed and redeployed and increase their mental health and their emotional intelligence. We're telling them about Christ while we do that. This is going to require collaboration. So maybe churches in your community join together. We can no longer silo, but people of like-mindedness can join together. And then, you know, you're saying, man, I'm in a church of 100 people. Great, start small. Like, find the thing that you can do in your church and start small. And that's wonderful. So some new realities. We're going to have some global problems, right? Finances, you know, financial coaching. Most Christian financial coaching that we've offered in our churches for the last 20 years, Good Sense was a big one for a while, Financial Peace University, Dave Ramsey, all these things, they're all predicated on the fact that people have money. You know, you've got enough money and you might have some money left over, and here's what you do. What does financial coaching look like to people who have a lot more month than they do money? And how do we speak into that? So these are going to be global problems that we can address locally through our churches, because the government will not be able to handle the needs in the days ahead. And then look at churches as the go-to for holistic restoration in your community. If you become known, you know, if people say, oh, you're out of work, well, you know, the people over there at so-and-so Baptist Church, man, when I was out of work, they encourage me, they help me. And some people are going to begin to journey with you, and they're going to belong with you. And we pray and we hope that one day they'll believe and they'll trust Christ, right? Derek Fuller from Forward Church Kitchener was on our last call. They've really, you know, permeated their community. And the college here in Kitchener, where their church is, Conestoga College, reached out to them last week and said, we've got, you know, a couple hundred international students that are stuck in dorms. They don't have the money to go home. The school year's over. They're not sure what to do. That financially they're in, you know, so this week his church is delivering 100 personal care packages with personal handwritten notes in each one of those to all of those international students at that college. So this is, you know, just speaking into the community and finding places, especially in this season, where you can bring hope and help and build bridges for the gospel. So that's my little deal, Tom. So I'll give it back to you.
Great. That's really good stuff, Steve. Thank you for that. Guys, questions, pushback, interaction? So a lot of you have seen increase in your, you know, as you're doing online things, you're seeing more people come and more things happen. We're getting views from people that you're thinking, wow, you know, who are these people? But how do we follow up with those? One of the challenges I think we've seen is that, you know, people come on, they watch, and then they go off, and we don't have this piece where we actually get their identity or their interaction or their other piece that way. There's a couple of things you can do, and you know, that's one of the challenges with this, is that often guys are doing what, you know, in the scramble to get online, they've done whatever they could, and you may be using YouTube or Facebook Live or something like that, and you're getting yourself out there. The problem is with those, people can watch more anonymously. And if you do have the chat feature up, they have to chat in front of everybody. And so somebody who's really wrestling with something, they're not going to ask the kind of questions that need to be asked, that they may need to ask in that forum. That's why I encourage you, and why many of our guys are seeing greater success using like Church Online Platform, that tool, because what it gives to you is it allows you to use what you're already doing in, whether it's Facebook Live or YouTube as a tool, but to insert that into this platform, because that platform allows you to have, first off, multiple people can be hosting and serving as people who can pray, who can do the chat room and those things. But those things can happen in real time and they can happen in privacy. So people can have, they can have private prayer, or they can interact in the group chat, and they can do that like one to the next, and it's an easy tool that works back and forth. So that's the church online platform. So if you go to churchonlineplatform.com, you'll find it there. So that's just a helpful tool that just kind of will take it to the next level. Plus, you get a little bit more ability to know who's actually engaging. It's more difficult for them to just peek and watch it and then run away, and you don't get the opportunity to follow up. So that's just a tool, and it's free. It's a great tool. Other questions about outreach things at this point?
Tom, let me just jump in. I mentioned this last call, but you know, I would encourage you guys to encourage your people. One of the things that the whole world longs for is community. We've created digital community that is a poor substitute for community. But in most communities, when sociological studies are done, they do one every 2 years in Waterloo region where I live, and always number one or number two, the biggest sociological need is community. People feel there's no community. I lived in the southern US for 11 years. And Southern architecture for 100 years had front porches. You know, if you see a house that's got a big front porch, you often say, oh, that looks really Southern. What ruined community, or contributed to the ruining of community in the South, was, believe it or not, air conditioning. Because when air conditioning came, everybody went inside. They didn't sit on the front porch like they did on the Andy Griffith show and waved at their neighbors, and people were out walking, and how was your day, and how are you doing, how's your kids? But now people are stuck in their houses, right? So, you know, give some ideas to your people about how do we build relationships, like create a Facebook page for your apartment building. Get the kids to make a sign and stick it in the foyer. Our apartment Facebook page is this, please join. Or, you know, get the kids to make a sign and stick it on the front of the garage that says, our neighborhood Facebook page is this, please join. And then you begin to build community and relationships when people are stuck in the house. You know, if you've got people that have a video projector, you know, a week or two from now, when we've got some warm nights, you know, project Frozen on the front of your garage, and you know, and write a sign that says, hey, we're going to have community movie night from your front porch, and we're going to show Frozen. And so, you know, and it'll be lousy quality, but it'll be fun, and they'll participate because they're ready to get out of the house with those kids. You know, so, you know, just things like that you can do. You know, put a huge Tupperware at the end of your driveway with some stuff in it that says, help yourself, you know. Might it be stolen? Yeah, it might, but that's okay. Like, we've just got to, you know, be generous and really build the generosity factor in these tough times as God's people and as his churches.
It would be a neat thing to really challenge your people to make sure that they're engaged in or have launched a Facebook page for every neighborhood that is represented by your church. Can you imagine if every neighborhood had one, and it was populated by your people, or started by your people, who then, you know, build relationships as a result of that? That would be really cool. There's another app that's out there. It's called Nextdoor. That is a great tool for that, and it's available on any platform, but it runs off a GPS feed that basically identifies where you live and puts you in connection with people around you. I just discovered it a few weeks back, and it's made connections with neighbors that I didn't know yet, who live in this area that we've had opportunity to minister to during this crisis, but it was all because of that. So, and that's like international as well. So people, I actually heard about it from people in the States that I was connecting with, and I looked it up, and it's like, oh, West Brant, that's where I live. And I'm like, right in, it's my neighborhood. I invited my neighbors on either side. They invited some more neighbors that I didn't know. And all of a sudden, you know, we have more community and connection. People are sharing needs and all kinds of things. So there's opportunities. Wouldn't it be cool if the church took over that as a tool? Yeah. What other things are you guys trying to do? So here's one of the, and the quiet is always a little disturbing, but it's part of our reality. Okay, so I've been doing this for about 12 years now, in with Feb Central, and been to most. I think when I look at the room here, I think I've been at most of your churches, if not all of them, in that time. I've been to many of our Feb Central churches, and one of the things that I've realized is that often strategic evangelistic, implementation, that kind of idea that we're going to be strategic about reaching people, is something that pastors have on their list, but it's down near the bottom because they're inundated with demands from their people, and the preaching and the teaching and the funerals and the weddings and the marriage counseling and all the other things that are going on. And evangelism is the one thing that people aren't saying, hey, wait a minute, you didn't come to my door, you didn't do something. So it's the one thing that ends up getting put back just a little bit. We don't do it on purpose. We want it to be our priority, but it just often doesn't happen that way. I think we have an opportunity right now, during this time when we've taken this collective deep breath, to rethink and say, okay, well, what's going to be different after this when things begin to re-engage? Mike, you got something?
I'm hoping to do a Facebook Live prayer time here in the town of Wawa. Now, Wawa is different than pretty well everywhere else around because we're about 3,000 people and we're isolated. What I mean is we're, there's roads in and out. It's on Highway 17, but we're where there's no major center beside us.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're 10 minutes outside of town, that's too far,
yeah,
geographically. But in town, people get to know me. And I've made a big deal. Probably it's starting to pay dividends. It's still a long shot and it's a gamble. But I've been on so many different committees in town that right now the municipality holds weekly a meeting with all the social service agencies. I'm there, and I was one of the first people they said they were going to reach out to and say, what do you think the town needs? I gave them some ideas. I meet in this group, and I don't have a whole lot to say, but when I do say something, I try to make sure that they're thinking long term and they're thinking about people's, being frail and the lack of hope and the despair they're going to face, and they're starting to, I think I said deaths and suicides. So bringing that around, so now I'm at a place where the mayor has come and said, would you be willing to talk on our town talk, the weekly town talk that the town hosts on the radio station? So I'm hoping to do that. Because of my involvement in the other committees, people are calling me, say, can you help us with this or make a connection? I was just at the Valley, we have one grocery store in town. And actually, it's probably better than most others because we have enough. We've never had a shortage. A couple of things were short a couple of days, but not like the shelves were bare. But they're starting to implement, the 6-foot rule everywhere in the store. And I was there the second day they started it, and I just spoke with the owner. I said, listen, you want me to put something on Facebook to say how great this is? So on the local buy and sell, I did that. And it's just gone ballistic with the like comments. And the grocery store owners are having a tough time because there's still a lot of people who are giving them a hard time. So I've been going out of my way to offer our services to help people with essential needs. And it's working in town because people in the church are hearing, people think we're doing a lot more than what we're actually doing. I've got a radio ad that we've done in the last 2 years or 2.5 since we moved our meeting place from out of town into town, which is another long story. But I've changed the ad twice since COVID started about what we're doing and what we want to do for people, not letting anybody fall through the cracks. So it's building so much awareness. Whereas before, at one point, when we first moved in our services in town, people thought we were closed because we were selling the building, which we're still trying to sell. But my point is now I'm going to do this live prayer thing And I got to work out the technology to do it through Zoom so I can have a few people. And I expect if I advertise it online on Facebook about a week before and a few days before, we'll have people that will come and ask for some prayer requests. And we're just going to keep it simple. We're going to make it as ecumenical as possible. I'm just going to do it with people that I know from our church. But I see some big dividends from that, because I'm always telling people we're willing to help however we can. Now, you guys in bigger centers, you don't have the same exposure that I do.
Yeah.
And so, but I've just been hitting that hard. So once I
great,
get
Mike.
spare time, I'm going to try and do some other things online.
Yeah.
Mike,
That's great.
I want to jump in on what you're saying. And I think many of you know Mike, but if you don't, he's been doing some of the just amazing revitalization work in Wawa. It's one of the toughest places you could be and be doing revitalization in a small northern town. But he's done it just like you're describing. Mike, others may not be in a small town, but just connecting with your community in the way you've done is something that lots of pastors can be doing. And you're seeing the fruit of years of having invested in the people there and been faithful and keep going at it, even when it's been really hard. And I appreciate just hearing you talk.
Well, I can tell you that until the COVID came around, there's some days I was kind of, you're always assessing stuff and looking 5 and 10 and 15 years out. And I'm thinking, spent too much time in all these committees? And it's starting to see results, because the social workers, if the peak doesn't happen sooner, and people start to get feeling suicidal, and there's going to be deaths, and the social workers, the counselors, the secular counselors are saying, Mike, we're going to need all hands on deck. And I've never sold myself as a counselor, because they don't see our qualifications the same way, but I've sold myself as somebody who's willing to give encouragement, to let people talk to as an alternative when they have the questions about life, about, does God exist? All those questions, are they angry at God? And I've been doing that every time that I get invited. There's groups of meetings and I sell that. Well, I've been running into the counselors, not literally, but from a distance, and they're saying, Mike, it was great to talk to you. And I'm making them think, well, you're thinking about the future. I mean, the next 6 months and all the way out. So, yeah, I think, start now. And I'm
Good
hoping,
stuff,
I don't know
Mike.
where it's going to go.
Good stuff.
One idea that I think is a great idea, especially when you're in smaller communities, but it could be in a larger community, is, we one of the things we should be encouraging our people to do is to be very grateful. My wife had to do the drive-through groceries yesterday, and this really nice, 16-year-old kid came out, and she got talking to him, and my wife said, I just want to thank you for doing this. How's it going? And he said, oh, fine. And my wife said, are people nice? And he goes, some people are really nasty. And here's this kid, making $10 an hour, whatever you make doing that. What if we encouraged every family in our church, because the kids are stuck in the house. One of the things, I still oversee the global missions ministry at Forward. So every Friday morning, we have a Zoom call literally around the world. I do it at 8 in the morning to include kids in Canada and kids as far Russia with the missionary kids. And we have a Zoom call with all the kids, and we have a game every week. So this week it's a treasure hunt within their own house or apartment and everything, and they got to find all these things. But what if and they love it because they're stuck inside. What if we encouraged every family in our church, the kids, make a sign, have a contest, make a sign that thanks the frontline medical workers. So make a sign that said, who knew that angels wore medical masks? Or we love our doctors and nurses, and stick it out on your garage or on your front door or on your mailbox, or stick a couple, sticks in the ground and have a contest and say, we're going to give out some prizes. And maybe every kid that makes a sign gets a prize. But it just communicates that the people of God are grateful people. And we must communicate that at these times, that we are so grateful because God has been so gracious to us.
If I can add just very briefly, what we've been doing is two things. First, we've been doing a book reading with our people for evangelism. the Gospel Coalition let us read the Evangelism as Exiles book to our church. So we asked them for that. They said, we'd gladly, let you read that to the church. And so I love many of the ideas you guys have brought up. And I just love to also see how evangelism works organically. And so we just happen to have tons of nurses in our small church, about 200 people or so.
Cool.
And so 2 weeks ago, I was on a Zoom small group call with one of the nurses who's been working with COVID-19 patients. And he said he had this phenomenal conversation with a guy about Christ. And he's kind of on his he is on his deathbed. And he got to talk to him about Christ. And so that was just wonderful to see how organically people are doing it as we're kind of stirring the pot and reminding them over and over again.
Good.
The other thing is an ironic thing, because our church has a kind of a good reputation for being a friendly and kind church. And I love what you said, Steve. They don't want just a friendly church. They want friends. And I love that. So I kind of like to tell my church once in a while that, that's nice that we have that reputation, but it's not always true. Like some people come and they do fall through the cracks. And it just so happened that we got an email. It wasn't a scathing email, but it was to me and the lead pastor, and said, just so you know, we appreciate the sermons and the pastoring that you guys have done, but me and my daughter are going to just come for the sermons. We've found that it's very cold. It's been very cold and hard for us to get connected at your church. Oh man, that was hard to take. We talked to her, we tried to do our best, but during COVID-19, she happens to have needs of groceries and medications, and we reached out to her. And sure enough, by God's grace, we had an opportunity to give her some groceries. And then ironically, she's so grateful for the church that she hadn't felt connected to. So anyways, it's cool to see how the Lord is organically working things out. Our church is on the move. A lot of people are calling the elderly ladies. We also have a few widows at our church, and they're constantly getting calls. So to see the love of Christ abound in our church is also an amazing thing to watch.
So. What else is happening? What else are you guys doing to reach out into community connection?
So in Fenland Falls and Bobcaygeon, we're still in that sort of reaching out to the community, letting them know that we want to be a part of the community, that we're here for their good in general. So for both of our sites during this time, we've actually put up a 4x8 chloroplast sign just thanking essential workers. We're right on the main street. It's cheap. I mean, it's like $100 to print. It's not a big deal. But we've got a lot of response just from that. We've been sending pizza to the nursing homes. I'm sure you've all heard of Pinecrest and Bobcaygeon. So we've sent pizza to all the workers there and the grocery stores. And so in both towns, we're trying to just let everyone know that, we're here. We appreciate what you're doing, and almost in a way of saying, hey, just another thought of, if you think of Trentside, or if you need something, come to us. Just trying to be a good neighbor at this point in a big way. So we've gotten some good response from that as well.
That's great.
What we do is we reach out through the local TV station. Every one of our communities has a local cable station, and generally they have some free time. So what we do is we actually put a sermon on there every week, and they're actually letting me go in and tape it. You can actually add videos. You can put testimonies. In fact, we have lots of plans for that in the future as well. We can put testimonies on and different graphics, and you can do all kinds of things. But it's free, and it's generally available for every community. So if you went to the cable station and actually, or called them up and say, hey, can we have some of your time? They just may give it to you.
That's great. That's great. That's North Bay, right?
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. Great. Dave, how are your missional communities handling this?
All right, just unmuting it. Yeah, Josh is here from our church, and he kind of oversees it. Josh may know they're still meeting on a weekly basis, and we're trying to leverage them and just encourage them to, as a group, connect and find ways to reach out. Josh, Josh Gray there, do you have any thoughts there?
I think one of the neat things about our missional communities, and this is not outreach, this is kind of a internal care. There's been a lot of, shouldering each other's burdens. I can't remember who mentioned the widows that have been cared for in one of the other churches. Seeing a real sense of community and that being kind of fulfilled. The challenging part from a mobilizing standpoint is what I feel right now is that a lot of times we want to help facilitate mission organically and even relationally, but we're isolated. So I love hearing some of these suggestions of what you guys are doing. That next door, Dave has put me onto that. I haven't had the same traction with neighbors, but even those Facebook groups, I love hearing that to try and push our people to that front. I think for us as a church, one of the neat things has been, we have a lot of different relationships with local schools and organizations. And I think one of the things that has been on our heart, and we're trying to communicate to our people through our missional communities as well, is just to be available, to make yourself available, whether that's to your neighbors, to your coworkers, even if that's in isolation, but just nurture and grow those relationships that God has placed in your life. And there's been some really neat fruit, and I think opportunity that has come and is coming from that, whether it's, buying groceries for a lot of families for one of the local schools, or supporting a women's shelter that's not a Christian organization and just coming alongside them, and just really building relationships with different organizations. So the missional communities is still a piece we're trying to figure out. We do have an upcoming initiative with the Pregnancy Resource Center where we're going to be, putting together these care packages for women that are having children. But we don't have a ton right now, I would say, at this point. Okay. So thankful for the feedback and the things that everyone's doing.
Well, we are running out of time. I have one thing I wanted to share with you just as in closing, and then I got just an announcement at the end, so don't leave. The one thing that Tammy and I have done in the past and continue to do now has been praying for our neighbors specifically. We get busy and we're in and out of our neighborhood, out of our homes and all of that. And to have that intentionality of praying for the neighbors on either side by name, praying for the ones across the street by name, and pleading with the Lord for opportunities to connect with them, and then getting outside. We're going for walks, we're doing stuff. We talk to people from a distance. We're not, violating any laws at this point, but we're having opportunities. I don't know. I think maybe we need to be challenging our people more to be specifically praying for their neighbors on either side and just asking God to make a difference in their lives. Present them with that as a challenge to create these gospel opportunities that can come. We've seen them turn into the salvation of some of our neighbors, and but it didn't start until we really got praying for our neighbors. So just something that might stir that for you guys specifically, that we can get lost in, churches, what we do on the weekend, and we're busy at work and everything else happens. And we forget that, we are the people who have been sent to the neighborhood that we live in. And if not us, who? Right? So we have a responsibility. Anyway, that was just on last note on this one. Next week, we will not be doing this gathering because we have our regional conference on Zoom on Tuesday, and we didn't want to over Zoom you. So we're adding new words to the dictionary after this. So, but we don't want to overtax you with Zoom craziness. And so on Tuesday, we're hoping all of you will be present Tuesday for our regional conference on Zoom. It won't be long. It's not going to be like 2 days compressed into one. It's going to be about an hour and a bit. And so we would love for you to be a part of that. So that will be on Tuesday. Wednesday, we'll give you a break. The following week, you will have an invitation to join us again for the think tank conversations. So thank you guys so much for being a part of things, and it's been good. So thank you. All right, God bless you all. We'll see you next week on our regional conference. Okay.
Tom, maybe you and I and Tim and Steve just hang on.